imagine me and you, I do. I think about you day and night. It's only right to think about the girl you love and hold her tight.
Welcome to Crazy Carrot Studios. My name is James, and today we will be going over adding animations to our character. Okay, back in our project here, I wanted to go over a couple things. One of the reasons why we selected the little ghosty prefabs that we brought in from Unity Asset Store, one of the reasons why I chose that was because it does have some really good animations in there as well. And I wanted to kind of go over how we can maybe set this up and give a little background of what's going on with the animation right now. So if we double click on our controller here, which is going to have your animator, this is under the child of the G2 Red, which is called Little Ghost 2 version 1. We're going to double click on the controller and it's going to bring up our animator tab. Now if you notice here, some of you might actually have the dance 1 as a default or another one. I set mine as the default right here by just coming in here and setting it as a default. You can do that to either one. But you notice it has quite a few animations. And so we're going to create our own controller based off these animations. This is what a controller would look like from the animation tab inside our project folder. Now inside of our actual mesh of the ghost, if we come over here to the animations tab and scroll down, you'll notice it has all these different animations in it. Now we can adjust them all right through here, but that's on a different topic. We're not going to get that much detail about how to manipulate these animations, but I do want to start off by removing some of these animations from this and allowing us to be able to adjust it outside of the mesh. So for this first part, we're going to go ahead and duplicate the idle by hitting Control D. I want to duplicate the fly also by hitting Control D. And let's see what else. We'll go ahead and bring in the attack, even though we won't use that in this episode. Attack 1 and attack 2. And for now, that's what we're going to leave with. Now, if you just click on one of these and you wanted to see what it looked like, you can just hit the play button and you'll see exactly what that attack is going to be doing. For the dancing. For idle. And for fly. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that our character will start off in the idle position when it's not moving, but the moment it starts moving, it goes into this fly animation. But we're going to create it out of our own controller, so we don't have everything in here, we just have what we need. So let's come over here to our animations. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and bring all these animations that we just duplicated, and I'm going to bring them into the animations folder. So now I got them right here, and I'm going to create a new, and I just right clicked in this open area, go to create, and we're going to look for animator controller, and I'm going to call this one Ghosty controller. Okay, and so now what we're going to do is we've got this Ghosty controller here, and you notice it has nothing inside the animator. Well, what we want to start off with is bringing the idle in and making sure that's our default. It's going to be set to orange. Let's say, for example, you had the fly in here as well, but you wanted the fly to be default. We could just hit set default layer. But we want it in this case to be our idle. So we're going to set that default layer. And in order for us to get the fly to actually work, we're going to have to create what's called a parameter. There are many different ways you can do this. You can do this with a float based on your speed. Or in this particular case, we're going to create a bool, and we're going to say is flying, or is moving, however you want to call it. In another scenario, if you're having a character that actually moves around with walking, like a humanoid character, maybe you say is walking or is running. In this particular case, we're not doing either of those, so is moving or is flying is actually relevant and would make more sense. For this one here, we're going to make a transition from idle to fly and make a transition from fly to idle. Now all I did to do that is right click and hit make transition. Now in this transition we want to make sure it has no exit time. The reason why you're doing that is you don't want the idle to have to finish the transition before it starts to fly, because what would happen is we would be moving and the idle would still be playing for a few seconds before it actually switches to fly, and it would be more of a delayed fly effect. And you don't really want that. Same thing when it's flying. When we're done moving, we want it to exit out right away and go right back to idle. So that's what that's going to be. Now, in order for this to work, we're going to need to make sure we put in our player controller script that we have. What is it called here? Let's go to our scripts. And we had it under player controller right here. What we want to do is we want to make sure we're accessing the animator and referencing this is move bool, and when we start to move, this is triggered to be true, and we stop moving, it's going to be triggered to be false. And that's going to allow us to go from true to fly, false back to idle. So in that particular case, let's go ahead and open up our player controller script and see what that's going to look like. Alright, we're going to scroll back to the top here, and obviously one of the first things we're going to need to do is have access to that animator. So I'm going to go with a private animator, and we're just going to call it animator. I know, simple. Alright, now in here, kind of in the same place we did the weight, we're going to do the same thing we did with the controller and everything where we get the component. But the difference is, in our particular project, the animator is not on our main, where the script is. The animator is in the child of that. So what we want to make sure to say is animator, if I can spell, is equals to get components in children right here. And it's going to be a little bit different than the get component. And what it's going to do is it's going to search the children under the parent and look for, in this particular case, we want animated. And then we went to our little brackets and end it. So now it's going to look and find this component for the animator and place it in there for us. Now, we come back down here to our update. We notice here, this is where our movement is happening. Is sprinting and controlling and our rotation. So basically, under this, we're going to put in, let me go ahead and do a comment here. We're going to play, fly, animation if the player is moving. Alright, so basically we're doing an if statement here. If move direction dot magnitude is greater than 0, which means as long as our movement is more than 0, which 0.1 means we are technically moving, we're going to switch to the fly animation. So let's go ahead and finish that up by putting our brackets in here. And then in here we're going to say animator dot set bool, because remember we did set it up as a bool. So we're going to set that bool to is flying. Now make sure you do spell this the same way you have it in, I think we did is movement, is moving, or we didn't put something. Let me go ahead and do that. My fault. Okay, so is moving. So I'm going to switch that to is moving. And it's got to make sure it's spelled the exact same way, so if it helps, to copy it and then bring it over, so be it. But let's make sure that is set up correctly. And then what we want to do is assign a true-false value. And you notice here when I do this comma, it gives us a couple of hints. So when you do the animator set bool, it's asking for the name of the string, which is moving, and the bool value. So in this bool value, we're going to access true. Just like so. Now, if we are not moving, so the magnitude is not greater than 0, we want to do an else. So it's basically an if else or if then, or however you want to look at that. That's basically what you're doing. So we're going to now say animator dot set bool is moving. So you can copy this if you wanted to, but we're just retyping the same thing. The only difference is now, instead of true, we're going to call it false. And just like that, we should have everything we need to make this work. So let's go test this out here. We're going to save it. Come back into our project after it does all that. Let's go to our scene and let's just see how this is going to work. Now the first thing we got to remember is we're still using this little ghost one. We need to make sure we bring the ghost controller in. And we have the is moving there. So when we hit play and we start to move, it did not start to fly. Let's find out why. So it's sitting in idle. But when we go here, it is not activating is moving. So we have something correct. But you do see that the is moving is being triggered. So why is that? Well, the reason why is because we did not set up those transitions. So if you came in here, yes, we did the has exit and we unchecked it, but we did not set the condition for it. So we want the idle to switch to flying if is moving is true. And we want to make sure we switch it back from flying to idle if is moving is set to false. Now once we do that, it should allow us to do exactly what we're talking about now. Once we start moving, it jumps to a fly animation, and once we stop, it comes to an idle animation. Now to show you what that was going to look like if we did have the exit times put on, and the reason why you want that in there is watch the delay between idle and fly. I'll tell you when I hit move. We are going to move now, and it took that little bit of time before it started flying. And that's because when you're looking at the animator, let me see if I can do a split screen here for you. When you're looking at the animator and we start to move, it's got to finish that idle animation before it switches to fly. Same thing with the fly animation. It's going to finish its whole routine before it switches back to idle, even though we wanted to do it right away. So again, we want to make sure we take this exit time off of both of those. And now you'll notice when we start to move, we'll get a check mark here and it'll automatically transition to fly right away. It will not finish the animation, it'll just switch, which is exactly what we want. And then when we hit shift, it's still moving and it's just flying a lot faster. Excellent. So that's going to conclude this particular one. On the next episode, we're going to go ahead and create a second character that's going to be our nemesis, I guess you could say. And we're going to set up a controller and a nav mesh agent to allow that character to follow and chase this character and stop within a certain distance to set up an attack animation at a later date. But for right now, I just want to kind of get us started with a nice little animation that's going to trigger from idle to fly. So join us next time when we try to create our enemy character to go along with this character. And from all of us at Crazy Carrot Studios, we would like to say thank you. And don't forget to please like and subscribe. We will see you next time when we get back to Learning with Bob.
The sky